comfortable that we had sufficient legal evidence. You know, if you're going to charge a person with murder, he has a right to believe that the system would only bring charges if there was sufficient legal evidence. So we waited until the point in time when we had that degree of evidence to move forward.
So one of the comments from Keefe in recent years is that he has said that he has terminal cancer, he has cancer, he's very unwell. Is that playing any role in this criminal procedure?
I've heard the same comments as well, some of the statements he's made to the media. I don't know his current medical condition. I'm not going to speak to whether he's still suffering from cancer or not.
Do you think that the trial perhaps will be happening quicker because of the high profile of it, or when do you anticipate the trial likely?
Well, in a couple of weeks, when he's formally arraigned, he has a right to invoke the Speedy Trial Act, which means setting a trial within 60 days, or he can waive that right to a speedy trial, and then the trial would be set off into next year. We have to wait to see at the arraignment what he chooses to do. Anybody else? We're good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
What's happening, loungers? I hope everybody's doing as great as I am today. Listen, guys, we got a lot to get into today in regards to Tupac. What we were just watching was on Law and Crime, and it was regarding the indictment and the grand jury actually announcing the indictment of the suspect here, which we have as Keefe D. Okay, everybody knows him as Keefe D. We're going to go over all of this stuff today, what's happening with Keefe D, and how they kind of led to this space that we're in right now. And that is now over with, so we're going to go ahead and get into this. But today is the day that he actually had to face the grand jury. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at all this stuff and talk about these things. We're also going to talk about how long this has been and how crazy long this has taken for this to happen. And, you know, and some of the players that have been involved in this since the beginning of this. We're also going to talk about possibly Puffy's involvement in all this as well, and how he was connected, and how so many people have been talking about a lot of this stuff over the years, including family members of Biggie and others. Okay, so we're going to get into a lot of this stuff and, you know, just kind of talk about these things as well. We're also going to talk about the tragedy that took place over at Morgan State. So, and this also give, you know, some conversation in regards to that and what happened there, because that certainly is a tragedy. And we don't want to overlook that as well, being that Morgan State is an HBCU. Okay, so we definitely want to talk about that and get into those comments and get into that commentary as well. So it looks like we might be here for a little while. I got a little bit of time today, so make sure that you guys do sit back and relax and enjoy the show. Go ahead and grab yourself some lunch or something, some libations if you want to, because we are going to get into this right now, guys, okay? Give it about 5 minutes. We'll play a 5-minute timer, and then we'll get right into this. So I hope everybody is doing as great as I am today. Listen, guys, even though this is going to be actually kind of a somber video, I did want you guys to know, that I still want you to be in good spirits, right? Just always go and find some kind of aspirations or inspirations or affirmations to speak, even after, going through things like this and kind of talking about very heavy subjects, such as what we'll be talking about today. We're going to jump right into the conversation in regards to what's going on at Morgan State. But first, I definitely wanted to speak to everybody that is in the chat. Shout out to you, Bestie. I appreciate you being in the building. Maserati Triggs, appreciate you out here today. You said, peace, Miss T. Pre in chat. And Clark, I appreciate you being in the building as well. You said, good afternoon, chat. You said, good afternoon, Miss T. Pre. What's up, Pills? Definitely appreciate you being in the building as well. Salute T. Pre, Clark, and Triggs, salute. And you said Clark, and Pills. And I'm glad you're here, Pills, because I'm actually going to talk about some things going on over there in Vegas. And it would be really nice to have people that are, got boots on the ground and, kind of stay in the area and are always kind of in the area and can speak and attest to some of these things in regards to the police and whatnot over there. Because I've always had questions about the Vegas police and how they handled this, right? But we'll get into that in just a moment. Let's go ahead and first talk about what's going on at Morgan State, because this is serious, guys, okay? It was a crazy situation that took place over at Morgan State. But before I talk about it, well, actually, yeah, let's talk about the tragedy of it first, right? And then we're going to talk about the history of Morgan State and, what that school represents for America, what it represents for Black history, what it also represents in Black education, okay? And let's just talk about a little bit of this right now, but I want to get into the tragedy part of it just to kind of get that through, okay? So the Baltimore police are still searching for a suspect after 5 young adults were injured Tuesday night in a shooting on Morgan State University's campus that prompted active shooter alerts. Baltimore Police Commissioner Richard Worley and Morgan State University Officer Chief Lance Hatcher said university police officers were on patrol around 9:25 p.m. when they heard discharging on campus. Police said 4 men and a woman ages 18 to 22 suffered non-life-threatening injuries in the shooting. 4 of the 5 victims are Morgan State University students. The entire city of Baltimore heartaches for the Morgan community, for the victims and their families, and for our city as a whole, Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott said. Worley said multiple windows were shattered, prompting police to activate active shooter response protocols. Worley said police cleared buildings in the search for the suspect, who remains at large. The police officials said they could not confirm whether there was one or multiple shooters. Hatcher said university police received a call for the shooting around 9:27 p.m. and that the first public safety alert was sent to the community at 9:30 p.m., with 4 subsequent alerts that followed. Around 11:45 p.m., city police tweeted that the incident was no longer an active shooter situation. University officials tweeted that they lifted their shelter-in-place order and resumed shuttle services around 12:30 a.m. Worley said SWAT officers cleared every floor of the buildings they searched twice over before officials decided to lift the shelter-in-place order. Police continue to ask parents and community members to avoid the campus. Parents were asked to go to the Safeway grocery store parking lot at 4401 Hartford Road, where Baltimore police officers were on hand. Students said they attended Tuesday night's coronation of Miss and Mr. Morgan State University, a popular annual homecoming event week event. The shots were fired not long after the event ended. Morgan State University President David Wilson said a security plan was in place ahead of the events. Wilson said classes were canceled Wednesday and that the university will hold an emergency meeting Wednesday to reassess the remaining scheduled homecoming week activities. This is a very tragic event, Wilson said. Morgan State University will not be deterred. We will move forward and we will continue our momentum at Morgan, but it is indeed a very, very unfortunate situation to talk about our students being injured. The mayor spoke to gun violence as a national issue, saying action is needed immediately. We have the kids at college who were shot, and this happens time and time again, not just in Baltimore, but in Washington, D.C., in New York, in Atlanta, and in city after city after city after city, it's been happening that way for decades. And we have to deal with this issue nationally, said Scott. We have to get more serious about guns. Maryland Governor Wes Moore said his office is monitoring the situation and is in touch with officials on campus. We are grateful for the heroic efforts for the first responders who rushed to the scene and are actively working to ensure safety, Moore said on social media. Anyone with information is asked to call Baltimore Police or Metro Crime Stoppers at 866-7-LOCKA. All right, now I really want to talk more about Morgan State itself and how prestigious of a school it is. I know a couple of alumni myself that attended Morgan State, and just in various degrees from there. Okay, so but I definitely want to just talk about it because I never wanted to paint or never want to paint any of our HBCUs like they're some horrible place where violence just takes place and all kinds of crazy stuff, because certainly that's what they like to do, and in the media. But Morgan State is a very prestigious school, and it was founded by Black people. And let's go ahead and talk about that real quick, okay? So Morgan State University is a publicly historic Black research university in Baltimore, Maryland. It is the largest of Maryland's historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs. In 1890, the university, then known as Centenary Biblical Institute, changed its name to Morgan College to honor Reverend Littleton Morgan, the first chairman of its board of trustees and a landowner to the college. It became a university in 1975. Morgan State is a member of the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. Although a public institution, Morgan State is not part of the university system of Maryland. It is classified among R2 doctoral universities, high research activity. So some history on Morgan State. Morgan State's University is a historically Black college in Baltimore, Maryland, and it was founded in 1867 as the Centenary Biblical Institute, a Methodist Episcopal seminary to train young men in the ministry. At the time of his death, Thomas Kelso, co-founder and president of the board of directors, endowed the Male Free School and Colored Institute through a legacy of his estate. It later broadened its mission to educate both men and women as teachers. The school was renamed Morgan College in 1890 in honor of the Reverend Littleton Morgan, the first chairman of its board of trustees who donated land to the college. In 1895, the institution awarded its first baccalaureate degree to George W.F. McEachin, after whom the building of the School of Business and Management is named today. McEachin later earned a law degree from Yale University, and after establishing his career, became one of Morgan's main financial supporters. In 1915, Andrew Carnegie gave the school a grant of $50,000 for a central academic building. The terms of the grant included the purchase of a new site for the college, payment of all outstanding obligations, and the construction of a building to be named after him. The college met the conditions and moved to its present site in Northeast Baltimore in 1917. In 1918, the white community of Lauraville tried to have the sale revoked by filing suit in the circuit court in Towson, upset that the Ivy Mill property, the planned location of Morgan State, had been sold to a Negro college, quote unquote. The circuit court dismissed the suit, which the community appealed to the Maryland Court of Appeals. The appellate court upheld the lower court decision, finding no basis that citing the college at its location would constitute a public nuisance. Despite some ugly threats and several demonstrations against the project, Morgan College was constructed at the new site and later expanded. Carnegie Hall, the oldest original building on the present Morgan campus, was erected a year later. Morgan renamed a private institution until 1939. That year, the state of Maryland purchased the school. Morgan College became Morgan State College, and in 1975, Morgan State added several doctoral programs, and its board of directors petitioned the Maryland legislature to be granted university status. The university made national news in 2013 when it was reported that student Alexander Kenya, 21 at the time, had killed his roommate and then eaten the victim's heart and brain. Kenyu, who had previously been dismissed from Morgan State's ROTC program, confessed to the crime. In 2020, Mackenzie Scott donated $40 million to Morgan State. The donation is the largest in Morgan State's history and one of the largest ever to a HBCU. The following year, Calvin E. Tyler Jr. donated $20 million to endow scholarships for financially needy students at Morgan State. Tyler's donation is believed to be the largest single donation a former student made to his or her historically Black institution. So let's talk about a little bit more of the academics of the school. So Morgan State's awards bachelorette, master's, and doctorate degrees. More than 9,000 students are enrolled at Morgan State. And at the graduate level, the university offers Master of Arts, Master of Business Administration, Master of Science, Master of Education, Doctor of Education, Doctor of Philosophy, Doctor of Engineering, and Doctor of Public Health. And let's go down a little bit more because they have some like really interesting studies here, such as the College of the Liberal Arts, School of Business Management, School of Education and Urban Studies, School of Engineering, and School of Architecture and Planning. They have a great library there, which there's a really great picture of that too. I was going to post that, but I just didn't. And then they have several different programs there in athletics, as well as lacrosse, basketball, and they've also made it to the Athletic Hall of Fame and many times. They have a huge choir and band there at Morgan State, and everybody knows about the HBCU bands. And Morgan State does offer fraternities and sorority chapters as well. There are some notable alumni that have been there. Let's go over some of those people. Let's see here. Hold on. So here's the list of some of the Morgan State alumni. Walter Carr, in 1954, was a political cartoonist and illustrator. Jarrett Carter was a journalist, founding editor of HBCU Digest. He graduated in 2003. Robert Chu is an actor from The Wire. Joe Clare is a comedian from BET's VJ. Jay Deal, a composer and music director. Let's see, Walt Dickerson, a jazz vibraphonist. Dan Foster, Earl Graves, from 1957, an entrepreneur and philanthropist, founder of Black Enterprise Magazine. Malaysia Leak, 1991, jazz singer, better known as Meza. Monique attended the Academy Award-winning actress. She also attended. William Roden is a New York Times columnist. April Ryan is a journalist with the White House Correspondence. Kevin Short is an opera singer. Howard Chirp Silverman from 1975, the author of Diner Guys and 10 Bears. Lion Liston Smith is a jazz musician. David Talbert is a playwright and TV producer and entrepreneur. Walters Edward Turpin is a Harlem Renaissance novelist and professor. And Denise Williams is an R&B and gospel singer, and she attended this school. So that's just a list of some of the Morgan State alumni. There's many others. We can talk about education and science. T.J. Bryan is the first female president of Fayetteville State University. Nellie Buchanan is a longtime Latin and drama teacher at Frederick Douglass High School, and she was in class in 1921. Helen Edmonds, 1933, professor of history, North Carolina Central University. Valerie Thomas, a scientist who invented the illusion transmitter. Samuel Myers, 1971, Roy Wilkins, professor of human relations and social justice. Hubert H. Humphrey School of Public Affairs, as well as the University of Minnesota and graduate facility PhD program in applied economics at the University of Minnesota. And he is the class of 1971. H. Keith Moo Young, 1991, Chancellor, Washington State University, Tri-Cities. Ida R. Cummings, 1922, first Black kindergarten teacher in Baltimore. Warren Buck, 1968, a former physics professor at the Hampton University, where he established the physics graduate program, also the first chancellor of the University of Washington, Bothell. Some judiciary people that have come out of here. We have Robert Bell, Chief Judge, Maryland Court of Appeals. Jan Alexander, the judge of the District Court of Maryland of Baltimore County, Circuit Court and Baltimore County. And it says from 2002 to 2010. And then Roger Brown, Judge, Circuit Court, Baltimore City. Harry A. Cole, first African-American judge on the Maryland Court of Appeals and the first in the Maryland Senate. Ari M. Davis, Judge, Maryland Court of Special Appeals. Askew Gatewood, Judge, District Court of Baltimore City. John Hargrove, Sr., Judge, United States District Court of Maryland at 1984 to 1997. Joseph Howard, Sr., Judge, United States District Court of Maryland, 1979 to 2000. Neil Janey, Judge, District Court, Baltimore City, 1990 to 94. Norman Johnson, Judge, District, Baltimore City. Alexander Wright Jr., Judge, Circuit Court, Baltimore County, 1998 to 2000, and Judge, Maryland Court of Appeals, 2008. We have some military generals that came from Morgan State. We have H. Stephen Blum, of Lieutenant General, United States Army. Larry Ellis, General, United States Army, and William Ward of the General, United States Army Commander, United States Africa Command. There's some notable police officers as well that are also still to this day. And we have some sports people. Tim Baylor, 1976, defensive back of Baltimore Colts and Minnesota Vikings. Joe Black, 1950, pitcher, Brooklyn Dodgers, first African-American pitcher to win a World Series game. NL Rookie of the Year, 1952. Bill Brown of 1951, track and field, 800 meters, Pan American Games silver medalist. Roosevelt Brown, 1952, tackled New York Giants, member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Raymond Chester, tight end of the Oakland Raiders. Joshua Culbreath, 1955, track and field, 400 hurdles, 1956 Summer Olympics bronze medalist. Saraja Eubanks, professor of mixed martial arts, current UFC flyweight contender. Lynn Ford, 1949, end for Cleveland Browns, Pro Football Hall of Fame. Elvis Franks, 1980, defense end, Cleveland Browns, Oakland Raiders, New York Jets. John Fuqua, running back, Pittsburgh Steelers. Clarence Gaines, 1945, former basketball coach at Winston-Salem State University, coached most basketball games in college history. Cornell Gowdy, 1986, cornerback of Dallas Cowboys, Pittsburgh Steelers, current NFL scout. Leroy Kelly, halfback, Cleveland Browns, member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Willie Lanier, 1966, linebacker, Kansas City Chiefs, member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. David Maggette, attended, but he did transfer, but he is an NFL player. Joshua Miles, 2018, offensive tackle for Arizona Cardinals. Jack Pierce, 1984, track and field, 110 meter hurdles, Olympic Games bronze medalist. Jeffrey Queen, 1969, running backs for the San Diego Chargers, Oakland Raiders, Houston Oilers. Don Sanford of the American Israel Olympic sprinter. Visanti Shayankone, 2002, tight end for the New England Patriots. Chad Simpson, 2008, running back for the Indiana Colts, Buffalo Bills, Washington Redskins. And let's just finish up. We got a couple more here. John Sykes, 1972, running back for the San Diego Chargers. Maurice Tyler, 1972, cornerback for the Denver Broncos. Bob Wade, 1968, for the cornerback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Washington Redskins, Denver Broncos. Mark Washington, 1970, cornerback for the Dallas Cowboys. And Marvin Webster, 1974, center for New York Knicks. So we have a prestigious, large number of alumni that have attended Morgan State University, amongst many, many other people that are not listed on here that I know personally, and that I'm sure you all know as well, that attended Morgan State. So this is a great school. And, this is not, it's not that things don't happen. We do understand that things happen at colleges and things take place. But, I wanted to at least acknowledge the highlights of the school and the history of the school. My bad, guys. Sorry about that. I apologize for that. But anyway, I just wanted to go over how the school was founded and how, those things took place. And it's unfortunate that, this happened here. And hopefully this wasn't race related. We're going to look into it and see what goes on. But as I get more information on what happened, I will attempt to bring that to you guys. Okay. Whether I do it with my community wall or whatever the case may be. Definitely appreciate all of you for coming in. What's up, D. Darrell? Definitely appreciate you, Godfather, for being in the building as well. And Miss Murph, I appreciate you for being in the building. All right, guys. So let's get into the Tupac story, okay? Because there is a lot going on with that. And I have a few videos that I would like to share with you all. Bear with me just a moment while I pull up some of this stuff because, I'm actually going to go into the conversations first. And then I will go ahead and start. Well, you know what? I'll just share this. I'll start sharing some of these videos with you because there's a couple of things that I definitely would love to go over with you guys in regards to what's going on with Puffy, what happened with Diddy, his involvement allegedly in this, and what he's saying about it too. Okay, because Puffy's actually speaking on it, and he has some things to say. But we are definitely going to at least also look at this news conference too. Okay, so let's start with that because I think that it really told a lot in regards to how the cops are feeling regarding this situation, and how they don't want what they don't want us to think. You know what I mean? Like they're being so careful in what they want us to believe in regards to this whole thing in regards to their involvement or how they've handled it, at least anyway. So what I'd like to do is just go ahead and start with that. I will tell you guys this much. After looking into all of this, for years, I felt like Suge Knight was actually involved, right? And I don't feel that way now. I feel like he may even be vindicated with all of this because, it's just the way that it's all coming out and all the information that's being said. I have no respect at all for Keefe D whatsoever. Hold on, guys. I have no respect for him at all. And I'll get into those reasons in just a few moments. But what I really want to do is particularly just go over this press conference, okay? And just kind of get you guys kind of caught up on what the cops are saying in regards to this. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you guys. We're going to look at this first, and then we're going to get into my commentary on the police in this and, their involvement in this and what I think, is involved in them.
Hey, it's Adam from StreamYard. We have an exciting new feature to announce called Green Room, which is now available only on the business plan.
Hit the like button. I appreciate y'all being in the building.
Green Room is a waiting area for guests to prepare with hosts.
All right, guys. The sound comes in just a second.
For 27 years, the family of Tupac Shakur has been waiting for justice. We are here today to announce the arrest of 60-year-old Dwayne Keith Davis, aka Keefe D, for the murder of Tupac Shakur. Davis was arrested this morning by my LVMPD criminal apprehension team, and this investigation started on the night of September 7th, 1996. It is far from over. It has taken countless hours, really decades, of work by the men and women of our homicide section to get to where we are today. Several of those detectives that are standing here with us include Detective Cliff Mogg, the lead detective on this case. He is now retired. Well, I know there's been many people who did not believe that the murder of Tupac Shakur was important to this police department. I'm here to tell you that was simply not the case. It was not the case back then, and it is not the case today. Our goal at LVMPD has always been to hold those accountable and responsible for Tupac's violent murder accountable. Just like we do for every homicide victim in our city. Every single victim, every life that is lost is important and remains a priority to this police department. As we methodically built this case to move forward with an arrest, it was also important that at the same time, we're building towards a successful prosecution. We work closely with our esteemed district attorney, Steve Wolfson, in his office to ensure that is going to happen. Mr. Davis's own words reinvigorated our case in 2018. I'm going to give you some of those details, and I'm going to introduce to you our homicide lieutenant, Jason Johansson, and he will provide you many of the details on how we got here today. Lieutenant.
Thank you, Sheriff, and thank you everybody for being here today. My name is Jason Johansson, and I'm the homicide lieutenant with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And my goal here today is to walk you through our investigation and what led us to the indictment of Dwayne Davis, also known as Keefe D, for the murder of Tupac Shakur. This case has been reviewed by our homicide team and homicide detectives for over 2.5 decades. And ultimately, our persistence in this investigation has paid off. Let me walk you through a timeline of events that as we know them right now. Prior to September 7th of 1996, as we all know, Tupac Shakur was an artist who was signed with Death Row Records. And that Death Row Records and its CEO, Marion Suge Knight, were closely affiliated with the Mob Piru criminal street gangs, and that they had an ongoing feud with the Southside Compton Crips. Dwayne Davis was the leader and shot caller of the Southside Compton Crips. And both of these gangs operated out of the Southern California area of Compton. On the night of September 7th of 1996, Tupac Shakur, along with Suge Knight and members of their entourage, which include members of Mob Piru, came to Vegas to attend the Mike Tyson fight at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. Members of the Southside Compton Crips, which included Dwayne Davis, along with his nephew, Orlando Anderson, were also in attendance at the same event. As both were leaving the fight, members of Death Row Records spotted Orlando Anderson near an elevator bank inside the MGM. And at that time, they began to kick and punch him near that elevator bank. I will now show you hotel security footage, as many of you have already seen, related to this incident. And on this incident, you will see Tupac Shakur, who's wearing a shiny satiny shirt, along with Marion Suge Knight, who's a large man in a brown suit, punching and kicking Orlando Anderson. Following this incident, you'll see hotel security intervene, and then they will leave the area of the fight.
I want to point out that most people that are in that video that were partaking in the fight are now deceased. Most of those people are deceased. Okay, let's go ahead and keep going now.
Who's ready to hatch some cool pets? Click here to make your very...
Little did anyone know that it is this incident right here that would ultimately lead to the retaliatory shooting and death of Tupac Shakur. Following this incident, Tupac and Suge Knight both left the MGM to make their way to a post-fight party, which was to occur at a local nightclub. At the same time, word had spread amongst members of the Southside Compton Crips of what had occurred inside the MGM. And then that's when Dwayne Davis began to devise a plan to obtain a firearm and retaliate against Suge Knight and Mr. Shakur for what occurred inside the hotel against Mr. Anderson. After Davis obtained a gun, he entered into a white Cadillac along with Terrence Brown, DeAndre Smith, and Orlando Anderson. Based on our investigation, this is where we know they were seated. At some point in time, as they were in the white Cadillac, Mr. Davis took the gun that he had obtained and provided it to the passengers in the rear seat of the vehicle. As they were driving west on Flamingo Road near Koval, they located the black BMW, which was driven by Suge Knight, and in the passenger seat was Tupac Shakur. And as they turned around, they pulled up near the passenger side of that vehicle and immediately began shooting at Mr. Knight and Mr. Shakur. Following that shooting, the white Cadillac fled the area southbound on Koval. And after our officers arrived on scene, Tupac was later transported to the University Medical Center, where he was treated medically and died approximately 6 days later on September 13th. My homicide section handled this investigation from its onset and for a short amount of time. And within a short amount of time, what we knew was that we were working a gang investigation where our victims, our witnesses, and our suspects were all from Southern California and not local to Las Vegas. Within the first few months of the investigation, our detectives knew most of the information I just briefed you on. However, we never had the necessary evidence to bring this case forward and present it for criminal charges. As time went on, this case had been reviewed multiple times by different investigators assigned to my section, but it wasn't until 2018 that this case was reinvigorated as additional information came to light related to this homicide. Specifically, Dwayne Davis's own admissions to his involvement in this homicide investigation that he provided to numerous different media outlets. In our section, we knew at this time that this was likely our last time to take a run at this case to successfully solve this case and bring forth a criminal charge. It was at that time that this case was assigned to Cliff Mogg, a detective within my homicide section. And over the last 5 years, my section worked closely hand in hand with the Clark County District Attorney's Office and followed a systematic investigative plan over the last 5 years. We've conducted countless interviews and corroborated numerous facts that were not only consistent with the crime scene on the night of the incident, but also corroborated and were consistent with the sequence of events that night. This ultimately led to us procuring a search warrant, which was executed at Mr. Davis's residence in Henderson, Nevada. And following the execution of that search warrant, in close coordination with the District Attorney's Office, this case was presented to the grand jury, which ultimately led to Davis being indicted on charges of murder. Before I hand it off to the District Attorney's Office, I would be remiss if I didn't thank Detective Mogg and all the other detectives that were not only assigned this case and reviewed this case, but all the other detectives from other agencies that assisted us in this investigation. They know who they are, and thank you very much for all the assistance you provided. It does not go unnoticed. And lastly, one of the most important things, in my opinion, is we need to make this be a reminder that the charge of murder does not have a statute of limitations. This agency has been and is invested in solving our cold case homicides so that we can bring closure to those families and justice for those victims of homicide. And with that, I will turn it over to the Clark County District Attorney, Steve Wilson.
Thank you, Lieutenant Johansson. I appreciate it. Good afternoon. I am the Las Vegas, Clark County District Attorney, Steve Wolfson. It has often been said, justice delayed is justice denied. It's a quote we hear often and for many, many years when talking about our legal system, but not in this case. Today, justice will be served in the murder of Tupac Shakur.
The government is paying for people to go back to school if they're interested in healthcare. So due to a shortage in the industry,
I'd like to acknowledge the relentless work of the many Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department homicide detectives. We've mentioned Detective Cliff Mogg many times, and we can't mention his name enough. He is the detective, along with his colleagues, that brought this case here today to you. A Clark County grand jury has indicted Dwayne Keefe Davis with 1 count of open murder with use of a deadly weapon with a gang enhancement. Davis will appear in court in the next few days or so for a hearing to determine his custody status and to set a jury trial date. This grand jury has been receiving evidence for months and has determined there is sufficient evidence to justify the filing of this criminal indictment. I've assigned two of my top prosecutors, Mark DiGiacomo and Banu Palal, to prosecute this case. I know a lot of people have been watching and waiting for this day. Tupac Shakur is a music legend, and for a long time, this community and worldwide have been wanting justice for Tupac. Today, we are taking that first step. Tupac was actually quoted as saying, "Death is not the greatest loss in life. The greatest loss is what dies inside while still alive. Never surrender." Well, we didn't surrender thanks to the great work of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department under the leadership of Sheriff Kevin McMahill, Lieutenant Johansson, retired Detective Cliff Mogg. I am proud to announce the return of this document. This is the indictment we've been waiting almost 3 decades for. It spells out the facts and circumstances and what justifies a Clark County grand jury in returning an indictment. Justice will be served. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I just like to say that the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department Homicide Section year over year solves over 90% of the homicides that occur in our jurisdiction. You won't find that anywhere else in the United States. For those family members that have lost somebody that we haven't solved that case, I want you to know, just like in this case, we're not going to give up. I also say to you that as we begin, we're going to take a couple of questions. I want you to remember in your questioning that this investigation, subsequent arrest, and now indictment is only the beginning of a successful prosecution as we move forward.
Okay, guys. All right. Thank you guys for being patient on that. I just wanted to kind of preference the show with that. I was trying to catch when they had him actually in court this morning, but I wasn't able to catch that. But I did get a little bit in the beginning of the show of when they were talking with that guy that you guys were just listening to. Okay. So we definitely got all that on video. And there's just a lot going on, a lot of moving parts going on with this situation. But what I really want to start with is in regards to Tupac's actual life, okay, and how he was living and, you know, the things that he experienced in life and how things actually went for him, okay? And then we're going to get into Keefe D and his whole thing and what's going on with him. We're going to talk about Suge. We're going to talk about the police and why they took so long to actually, you know, roll out this indictment, what my thoughts are on that, some of the conspiracies I think about this, and so forth. We're going to talk about Vlad TV. We're going to talk about No Jumper and some of these other content creators, you know, who tend to be culture vultures, right? And, you know, we tend to get on these shows and let our hair down and just start talking. And, you know, it tends to become a problem for us, okay? So we're going to kind of talk about that effect that has happened. And then, you know, we'll kind of wrap this up with a lot of, you know, any questions or anything that you guys want to add to it and so forth. Okay. But let's go ahead and get into this real quick. So Tupac Shakur, decades after his 1996 murder, the artist and actor Tupac Shakur remains one of the top selling and most influential rappers of all time. Let's go from 1971 to 1996. Okay. And, you know, as we know, the latest news about him is that Dwayne Keefe Davis has been charged in his murder. Okay. Now, one of the top selling artists of all time, rapper and actor Tupac Shakur, embodied the 90s gangster rap aesthetic and in death has become an icon symbolizing noble strength. Tupac began his music career as a rebel with a cause to articulate the still relevant troubles and injustices endured by many Black Americans. The boundaries between his art and life became increasingly blurred as Shakur faced legal problems and jail time. On his fourth album, All Eyes on Me, Tupac leaned fully into celebrating the thug lifestyle. It was the last album Tupac would live to see released. On September 7th, 1996, the 25-year-old was gunned down in Vegas and died 6 days later. Police continue to investigate this murder. And let's just go a little bit further into some fun facts about him. Tupac's name is Tupac Amari Shakur, but he was born Lassane Parish Crooks. And he was born on June 16th, 1971, and he died September 13th, 1996. He was born in New York, New York. He was married at one time to Keisha Morris from 1995 to 1996, and he was a Gemini, okay? Let's talk a little bit about his early life and some things that took place, with him and his siblings and so forth. Now, Tupac Amari Shakur was born Lassane Parish Crooks on June 16, 1971 in New York City's Harlem. And his mother, Afeni Shakur, had been a political activist and Black Panther Party member who was arrested in 1969 for allegedly planning coordinated, quote unquote, attacks on police stations and offices in New York City. She became pregnant with Tupac while out on bail, and she was acquitted in 1971 after defending herself in court. When Lassane was 1 year old, Afeni changed his name to Tupac Amari after a Peruvian revolutionary who was killed by the Spanish. She said of the name, "I wanted him to have the name of the revolutionary, the indigenous people of the world. I wanted him to know he was part of a world culture and not just from a neighborhood." Tupac later took his surname from his sister Sakiwa's father, another Black Panther named Mutulu Shakur. Tupac also had a stepbrother, Mo Supreme. Tupac's father, Billy Garland, lost contact with Afeni when Tupac was 5, and he didn't see his dad again until he was 23. "I thought my father was dead all my life," he told the writer Kevin Powell during an interview with Vibe magazine in 1996. "I felt I needed a daddy to show me the ropes, and I didn't have one." Raising Tupac and his half-sister alone, Afeni worked as a paralegal before developing a crack cocaine addiction in the early 1980s. The family had to move often, struggling for money and living off welfare because she couldn't keep a job, unfortunately. In 1984, the family moved to Baltimore, where Tupac enrolled at the prestigious Baltimore School for the Arts, where he said he was the freest I ever felt. This was also where Tupac met the future actor Jada Pinkett Smith. He wrote poems about her, and she had a cameo in his music video for Strictly for My Niggas. Pinkett Smith later told reporters that she was a drug dealer when she met Tupac, and that she resented the way the movie All Eyes on Me 2017 later reimagined their relationship. It wasn't just about, oh, you have this cute girl and this cool guy, and they must have been in this. Nah, it wasn't that at all. It was all about survival, and it had always been about survival between us. So Tupac's Baltimore neighborhood was riveted with crime, so the family moved to Marin City, California. It turned out to be a mean little ghetto, according to Vanity Fair. And it was in Marin City that Afeni succumbed to her crack addiction, a drug that Tupac sold on the streets where his mother brought her supply. Her behavior led to a falling out between mother and son. Tupac's love for hip-hop steered him away from a life of crime, for a while at least. At 17, in the spring of 1989, he struck up a friendship with Layla Steinberg, whom he met when she was holding poetry lessons in an Oakland park. According to Holler, If You Hear Me, Searching for Tupac Shakur by Michael Eric Dyson. Already, Tupac had been obsessively writing poetry and convinced Steinberg, who had no music industry experience, to become his manager. She was eventually able to get Tupac in front of music manager Atron Gregory, who secured a gig for him in 1990 as a roadie and backup dancer for the hip-hop group Digital Underground. He soon stepped up to the mic, making his recording debut in 1991 on Same Song, which soundtracked the Dan Aykroyd comedy Nothing But Trouble. Tupac also appeared on Digital Underground's album Sons of the P that October. After Gregory also became Tupac's manager, he landed the up-and-coming rapper a deal with Interscope Records. A month after Sons of the P hit the stores came Tupacalypse Now, Tupac's debut album as a solo artist. Tupac often complained that he was misunderstood. Everything in life is not all beautiful, he told journalist Chuck Phillips. There is lots of killing and drugs. To me, a perfect album talks about the hard stuff and the fun and caring stuff. The thing that bothers me is that it seems like a lot of the sensitive stuff I write just goes unnoticed. As Tupac first began to achieve success as a rapper, Afeni was unaware of his career until friends told her. I didn't know what was happening to my son, she said. I thought, what am I doing? Afeni became determined to break out of her drug addiction, which she finally did after moving back to New York City in 1991. Tupac and his mother later reconciled and remained close the rest of his life. Inside, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about their relationship. So the Dear Mama story behind Tupac's hit. Tupac who only released 4 albums in his lifetime, has 21 albums to his name, 10 of which have earned platinum, multi-platinum, or diamond certification. As of July 2023, the Re-Recording Industry Association of America listed Tupac as the 45th top-selling artist of all time by album sales and streaming figures. Worldwide, more than 75 million Tupac records have sold to date, according to Forbes. Tupac's first album as a solo artist, Tupacalypse Now, 1991, although it didn't yield any hits, it sold a respectable 500,000 copies and established Tupac as an uncompromising social commentator on songs such as Brenda Got a Baby, which narrates an underage mother's fall into destitution, and Soldier's Story, which controversially spoke of blasting a police officer and dropping the cop. The song was cited as a motivation for a real-life cop killing by a teenage car thief called Ronald Ray Howard, and was condemned by then U.S. Vice President Dan Quayle, who said there is absolutely no reason for a record like this to be published. It has no place in our society. With those words, Tupac's notoriety was guaranteed. I want to add my own commentary to that real quick and just say that I don't believe that album only sold 500,000 copies. I think that's something that they try to say because of the controversy that surrounded that album politically. So I definitely think that album had way more than 500,000 copies sold and even out there. So we'll let them say that, but I doubt it, right? Okay, let's go into some posthumous albums. So we had the Strictly for My Niggas, Me Against the World, and All Eyes on Me. Okay, those were all here when Tupac was still alive. Okay, some of his posthumous albums came out afterwards. And in April of 2017, Tupac was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, one of music's highest honors. He was the first solo hip-hop artist to be inducted and was selected in his first year of eligibility. So there were some legal problems that took place and that happened in his life. Let's go over a little bit of that. In 1992, Tupac was attacked by jealous kids in Marin City. He drew his pistol but dropped it in the melee. Someone picked it up, the gun fired, and a 6-year-old bystander, Quaid Walker Teal, fell dead. Although Tupac wasn't charged with Walker Teal's death, he was reportedly inconsolable. In 1995, Walker Teal's family brought a civil case against Tupac, but settled out of court after an unnamed record company, thought to have been Death Row Records, offered compensation of between $300,000 to $500,000. In October 1993, Tupac shot and wounded 2 white off-duty cops in Atlanta, one in the abdomen and one in the buttocks after an altercation. However, the charges were dropped after it emerged in court that the policeman had been drinking, had initiated the incident, and that one of the officers had threatened Tupac with a stolen gun. Okay. Now, Tupac noted the case illustrated the misrepresentation of Black men in America and the attitude of some police towards them, which he had been talking about in his music. What was portrayed as a gun-toting gangster behavior by a lawless individual turned out to be an act of self-defense by a young man in fear of his life. All the while, Tupac's star continued to rise. Unable to escape punishment entirely, Tupac went to jail for 15 days in 1994 for assaulting movie director Alan Hughes, who had fired him from the set of Menace to Society for being disruptive. He faced much more serious charges in February 1995 when Tupac was sentenced to between 1.5 to 4.5 years of jail time for assault or abusing a female. The case related to the incident that had taken place in Tupac's suite in the New York Parker Meridian Hotel in November 1993. Tupac maintained that he hadn't R-worded the fan, though he confessed to the Vibe magazine journalist Kevin Powell that he could have pretended others who were present in the suite at the time from doing so. I had a job to protect her, and I never showed up, he said. So he is saying that something happened, but it wasn't him. All right, so let's go in a little bit further into joining Death Row Records and getting to All Eyes on Me. Now, while Tupac was in prison on the R-word charges, he was visited by Suge Knight, the notorious head of Death Row Records. Knight offered to post the $1.3 million bail Tupac needed to be released pending his appeal. The condition was that Tupac sign on to death row, which Tupac did. He was released from the high-security Dannemora facility in New York in October 1995. Even as he was glorifying an outlaw lifestyle for death row, Tupac was financing an at-risk youth center, bankrolling South Central sports teams, and setting up a telephone helpline for young people with problems, according to Vanity Fair. Tupac's debut for Death Row, the double-length album All Eyes on Me, came out in February 1996, with his new hip-hop group Outlaws debuting on the album. All Eyes on Me was an unapologetic celebration of the thug lifestyle, eschewing socially conscious lyrics in favor of gangster funk, hedonism, and menace. Dr. Dre, who had pioneered G-Funk with the NWA, produced the album's first single, California Love, which went to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and remains Tupac's best-known song. The third single for the album, How Do You Want It, also topped the chart. With 2 months of its release, All Eyes on Me had been certified 5 times double platinum. It would eventually become diamond certified, reaching more than 10 million combined sales as well as streams. All right, and let me just check on you guys and make sure you guys can still hear me over here. Appreciate all of you for still being in the building. Let's go ahead and make sure you guys hit the like button over there. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and go into a little bit of Tupac and the Biggie Smalls, the story of the Hit 'Em Up song, okay? So the Notorious B.I.G., well, let's get into how they kind of connected with one another. Now, before Tupac released his third album, he became a target. In November of 1994, he was shot multiple times in the lobby of the Manhattan recording studio Quad by 2 young black men. Tupac believed his rap rival Biggie Smalls was behind the shooting, for which nobody has ever been charged. Smalls always denied he knew anything about the incident. And in 2011, Dexter Isaac, a New York prisoner serving a life sentence for an unrelated crime, claimed music executive James Roseman paid him to steal from Tupac and that he shot the rapper during the robbery. In June 1996, Tupac released a diss track, Hit 'Em Up, aimed at Biggie Smalls and his label boss at Bad Boy. So let me make sure I put that photo up of all 3 of them, okay? Because all 3 of them are definitely connected, but we're going to talk about how, some are not as connected as we may have thought, okay? Now, in June of 1996, Tupac released the diss track Hit 'Em Up, which again was aimed at Biggie Smalls and at Bad Boy Records' Sean Diddy Combs. The song ratcheted up the tension between East and West Coast rap, and in the inflammatory song, Tupac also spat venom at artists like Lil' Kim, Junior Mafia, and Prodigy of Mobb Deep. Tupac and Biggie's rivalry was fast becoming hip-hop's most famous and ugliest beef. And Hit 'Em Up seemed to chillingly presage Tupac's death and the ensuing conspiracy theories. Grab your Glocks when you see Tupac. Call the cops when you see Tupac. Who shot you, but your punks didn't finish. Now you're about to feel the wrath of a menace. Nigga, we hit him up. Y'all know that song. Okay. Now, within 3 months, Tupac was murdered. 6 months after that, Biggie was also. And neither murder has been solved up until now. Okay. It looks like we are getting down to the level of solving these murders. Okay. Now, along with this music, Tupac pursued an acting career, and he appeared in several movies, among them starring roles alongside Janet Jackson in 1993's Poetic Justice and Mickey Rourke in 1996 Bullet. After Tupac died, a collection of poems he wrote before becoming a rapper was also compiled and released in a 2000 book called The Rose That Grew from Concrete. The world moves fast, and it would rather pass you by than to stop and see what makes you cry, reads one verse he wrote as a teenager. Tupac briefly dated pop star Madonna. However, while serving time in prison and in January 1995, Tupac wrote a letter to Madonna ending their relationship because of her race. For you to be seen with a black man wouldn't in any way jeopardize your career. If anything, it would make you seem that much more open and exciting, he wrote. But for me, at least in my previous perception, I felt due to my image, I would be letting down half of the people who made me what I thought I was. Tupac then married Keisha Morris in April 1995 while he was still in prison. The couple had met several months earlier at a nightclub when Morris was 20 and Tupac was 21. Their marriage was annulled 10 months later after Tupac was released from jail. The pair remained friends until his death. Soon after his marriage to Morris ended, Tupac began dating Kidada Jones. They had met at a club when Tupac apologized for insulting her father, Quincy Jones, for only dating white women. Now, Jones was in Las Vegas and with Tupac the night that he was shot. Now, we're going to start getting into a little bit of his death, and then we're going to get into Keefe D and our thoughts on that. Now, Tupac was riding in the black car when he was shot on September 7th, 1996. He died from his injuries 6 days later. It looks like that these gunshots were inflicted by who we now know as one of the suspects was Keefe D. Okay. On September 7th, Tupac was in Las Vegas with Suge Knight to watch a Mike Tyson fight at the MGM Grand Hotel. There was a scuffle after the bout between a member of the Crips gang and Tupac. Knight, who was involved with the rival Bloods gang, and members of his entourage piled in. And this is all alleged, okay? Later, as a car that Tupac was sharing with Knight stopped at a red light, a man emerged from the car and fired 13 shots, hitting Tupac in the hand, pelvis, and chest. Tupac later died at the hospital. His girlfriend, Kidada, and his mother, Afeni, were both with him in his final days. Tupac's body was cremated. Members of his old band, Outlaws, made the controversial claim that they had smoked some of his ashes in honor of him. His mother announced that she would scatter her son's ashes in Soweto, South Africa, the birthplace of his ancestors, and on the 10th anniversary of his murder. She later changed the date to June 16, 1997, Tupac's 26th birthday, as well as the anniversary of the 1976 Soweto uprising. In early 2018, BET aired an episode of Death Row Chronicles in which former Crips member Dwayne Keefe Davis, admitted that he was riding in the car with the man who killed Tupac. He declined to identify the shooter in the interview, revealing only the shots came from the back seat, though he had earlier told federal investigators that the gun was in the hands of his now deceased nephew, Orlando Anderson. We're about to get into that in just a second. The revelation fueled the launch of a Change.org petition that called for Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department to declare the case cleared. It also led to rumors that new arrest warrants were pending, but the Las Vegas Metro Police Department denied those rumors. In July 2023, news broke about a possible breakthrough in the investigation. The Las Vegas Police Department executed a search warrant at a home in Henderson, Nevada, and on July 17th in connection with the rapper's unsolved murder. Authorities haven't shared many details, such as what they were looking for or whether there's a suspect citing the ongoing investigation. Well, we do now know what they were looking for. They had found what they had found. They had found and taken multiple laptops. They've taken phones. They were taking tablets. They took hard drives. They took bullets. Allegedly, there was like all kinds of stuff that they took from this house. So they also had like a magazine from back in the day. And there was all kinds of other memorabilia and stuff that they took as well. this gets to help with this investigation. Okay. On September 29th, Davis was arrested and charged with murder for his role in Tupac's death, and he was indicted by a grand jury in Clark County, Nevada, and is in custody, according to prosecutors. Okay. So that's how the story of Tupac pretty much is, and that is his story. So let's get into a little bit of thoughts on Keefe D and what we know about him and what he's saying in regards to this situation, okay? And what I find crazy about all this, because I really want to talk about that for just a second. Now, Keefe D is now trying to blame Diddy for all of this as well, okay? First, he blamed his nephew, okay? Back in the day when the feds were onto him, right, and knew what was going on, and they started questioning him, he started snitching. He started telling on his nephew, okay? Now, here's my thing. I'm not going to get into the whole thing on the gang life, on any of that, right? I have my thoughts on that, but I'll just say this. It's here, right? It's not something that's, foreign to people. We know that gang life exists, okay? I'm not going to say whether it's right or whether it's wrong. All I'm going to say is that it does exist, and it's in our society, and it's very, very much encroached in our society, okay? So when you're talking about gang life and you're talking about being a part of such things, right, there's a certain code of ethics and a certain code of lifestyle that you go by. And if you're choosing to be part of such a lifestyle, then, you're expected to go by that lifestyle, right? That's just what it is with anything in life, right? Anything that you're a part of, you're expected to kind of, go by the rules of engagement, unless you choose not to be part of such a thing. It turns out a lot of times in these areas of life and in these spaces that you find people that are just so willing to just talk, right? And so willing to just open their mouth about anything, And I don't know, it could be a combination of, with him being a quote unquote gangster, it could be a combination of things. It could be that he's gotten older now and that now he's more mature, right? That he's no longer thinking this way. It could be that he's afraid, right? It could be that he's getting closer to death, So now, him being sick, having been diagnosed with cancer and so forth, now this is all weighing down on his heart, right? And that and other things he may have done. And so this is something he's just talking about. Or it could be like a sense of arrogance, right? I don't really know what it is that made him speak on it. All I can say is that it's amazing how much information he gave up, right? How much information that he spoke on, to the point where, we know that everybody else that was involved is dead, okay? And that there was most definitely a hit out on Suge as well, okay? So it wasn't just Tupac that they were trying to pick off. They were trying to pick off Suge as well. Now, my thoughts on Suge over these years, I have always thought Suge had something to do with it. I really did, and it was because of the way he was injured in the whole shooting, right? Like, I couldn't understand how, after all these shots that were let off, I mean, we got bucks going everywhere, we got all kinds of stuff popping. I'm not understanding how he didn't get hit much worse than he did, right? Like, I think he got like a graze to the hand and a graze to the ear or some shit, but it wasn't anything that was anything close to life-threatening at all. And so it made me think that he had something to do with it because, with Tupac being a part of Death Row Records, Tupac being one of his biggest stars, the thing about Tupac is he would have been much more profitable to him dead than alive. Okay, let's be real. The money that he would have to pay out to Tupac and pay out to an entourage and all these other things, this is all money he could keep on royalties, from him, or from whatever rights that he owns to his music. So I just really always thought that, but there was always something in the back of my mind that said, just leave it open, right? Just because it might not be what it looks like. It might not be what it appears. And it turns out that it's not. Even though, Keefe D is now trying to say, you know, hey, Puffy is the one that orchestrated all of this, right? And that me and Suge are kind of on the same page with this. No, they're not, right? This actually vindicates Suge Knight in many ways, okay? Now, propaganda is a hell of a drug. And there's one thing that the media definitely did and went along with the police, the Las Vegas police, to help along with this situation. What they did was they painted this picture of Suge Knight as this evil, terrible guy, you know what I'm saying, that everybody should be afraid of, okay, and that everybody should, you know, be concerned with. And, you know, we couldn't really hate him over niggas we don't know, over people we've never heard of and people we don't know, right? Perhaps people in, you know, in Los Angeles or in Oakland or whatever, whoever the person is that he's accused of killing and being a part of their you know, and why he's in jail and facing 30 years now. None of us know that person, okay? So we don't have any idea of who that is. So none of us would have any reason to hate Suge Knight over him. However, the world itself would absolutely hate him if they believed that he had anything to do with Tupac's killing, okay? Which is why they kind of kept up this whole image of Suge Knight. He was responsible. He's responsible, you know, and everybody's just getting these ideas in our minds about this until we got Keefe D out here talking, right? And that's just kind of throwing salt in the game while everybody's going down this lane of Suge Knight being responsible for all this. And how the cops just kept up with that whole idea, right? They really didn't give us much clues or much conversation in regards to, you know, what's been going on with this investigation. And it's understandable. Sometimes, you know, cold cases go on for 30, 40, 50 years, right? Sometimes they're never solved, right? I do think that a lot of this has to do with some payoffs. I will say that. Let's talk about some of the conspiracies with the cops here. I think a lot of payoffs took place. I think that the cops also remained silent for so long because they like to have the image that Las Vegas tries to carry for people that don't live in Vegas, right? People that don't frequent the area often. People who may come there once a year or once every few years, right? And they only go up the Strip. They only go, you know, down the Las Vegas Strip. They only go to the MGMs. They only go to the major casinos. They only go to get married, right? At one of the chapels or something like that. They only go and see that one area, and they don't really see much else of Vegas and what's going on in Vegas. That's what happens in most major cities like that, right? Most major places where people come in and out, they don't really know the ins and outs of what's going on. And so oftentimes the mayor and the politicians and even the police will keep up the image of the city, you know, by sweeping certain things under the rug. And that whole thing that happened at the MGM Grand that night where Tupac and his entourage was kicking Orlando Anderson's, you know, over there in the lobby, you know, that really made things look really bad for the city when it comes to tourism and when it comes to people feeling safe. And this is a space where you can feel safe and you don't have to feel like, you know, you don't want to go on certain areas that people know that, but they also know and feel like the Strip is a space that they can feel safe in. And so, you know, with trying to keep up that image and trying to keep things that way, you know, it's very understandable why the cops would remain quiet for so long. What they did was they allowed almost everybody that was in that video to be killed off by other quote unquote gang members, right? Everybody down to Orlando Anderson, who was getting kicked on the ground, up to the other two men that were in the car, okay? Which they're talking about now. They're talking about this guy now, and we'll get into him in just a moment, of who they're saying is actually the shooter, okay? Because Keefe D, all this time, while he didn't have to say anything, and I'm not saying that he shouldn't have, I'm just saying, okay, we're talking about a certain code of people, right? You know, he didn't have to say anything at all, but since he wanted to say something, okay, he threw his nephew under the bus and said, well, it was him, and in his mind, he's probably thinking he's dead, so, they're only going to charge him, not realizing that Vegas has rules on, and they have statutes on this, that if you're actually there, you can still be charged. If you were, partaking in any way in this crime, you can be charged as well. Okay. Little did he know that while he's telling this story, right? And the police, the feds actually tried to give him immunity, and said, hey, if you give us this and you give us that, we'll go ahead and we'll make sure that you're safe on that. I guess, you can say that he didn't want to snitch on certain people, and he didn't want to put Puffy and people like that out there at the time, because in his mind, he still had many, many years to go, many, many more years to live. And he wanted to spend that time with his family, and breathe the air, because if he had become that person and had, actually started putting out information on, who actually killed both of these men at that time, we probably wouldn't be talking to him today, right? Or he would have met the same fate as some of these other men that were in that car. Okay, so but that's basically what happened with him. He basically threw his nephew under the bus, told the cops that it was him. I guess he figured it would stop there, and it didn't. And they tried to offer him immunity, tried to offer him a deal. He didn't take the deal. He just kept going. And now here he is being charged with the murder of Tupac Shakur. I as bad as I want to blame Vlad too, right? I would love to blame Vlad and, these culture vulture channels like No Jumper and some of these other culture vulture channels, right? I would love to blame them. But it's kind of hard to blame them because nobody's telling anybody to get up on these places and get in these spaces and just let their hair down in front of these white people and have these types of conversations as if the feds aren't watching them, right? As if the police aren't watching them, as if the cops aren't paying attention. And what gets me about Vlad in particular is what he's saying now and how he's saying that, he's not responsible for the cops, trying to get in touch with him, and he's not cooperating with the cops. You don't have to, some things are just best just not even said at all, right? Because we know he's cooperating with the cops. That's number one. Number two, like the whole way that he interviewed him to begin with sounded like a complete setup. Okay, like that's just what it is. It sounded like that. You were particularly asking him interviewing questions and specific probing questions that would get him talking. Now, he was dumb enough to talk, right? I agree with that. He was stupid enough to talk, right? But at the end of the day, we're not going to pretend that Vlad was not trying to get that exclusive. And it wasn't for the streets, okay? It wasn't for the streets. And that's just that. But only our people, got to figure out, how to not get caught up in things like that. I'm not in any way, though, going to condone violence and condone what happened to Tupac at all. He was one of my most favorite artists in the world, and I can't condone that. But I also can't understand why this man was on this on BET and on over here and over there having these conversations as if none of this was going to come out, the way that it did. Let's play a quick video while we're waiting, while we're before we get into the rest of this right here. But I definitely appreciate y'all for being in the building. You said I'm behind. You said, but I would just wanted to add that because Tupac went on to glory while his appeal was pending, that conviction for the abuse was not finalized. There is Therefore, he is never finally convicted. Exactly. I agree. What's up, Stefan? I appreciate you being in the building. He said, good to see you, Clark. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's play this video I wanted to play for y'all. And then we're going to get right into the rest of my commentary here, because I do have some more commentary that I've got on this as well. All right, guys, let's do it. Let's do this.
About, at least not publicly, is that Keefe also previously said that Diddy offered $1 million to the Southside Crips to take out Pac and Death Row Records CEO Suge Knight. Former LAPD detective Greg Kading, who worked on the cases of both Tupac and Biggie Smalls, also previously publicly stated that the investigators had evidence that Diddy paid Keefe $1 million to take out Pac and Suge. In fact, there's a recording of Keefe confessing this to the investigators years ago.
So Tupac's trying to jump in the back seat. And what Suge doing? Just ducking. He couldn't really duck because he was too big. Yeah.
Keefe D has now identified his own nephew as the murderer of Tupac Shakur.
Bolstering Keefe D's claim was an informant in 1997 who told investigators that Puffy had hired the Southside Crips to kill both Suge and Tupac.
Now, it's unclear why it took them 27 years to arrest Keefe, considering his confession and the fact that he's been willingly and openly talking about his involvement on every podcast that would have him. Well, the internet and its theories on this and fans are speculating that the authorities...
Here's one thing you need to do.
On every podcast that would have him. Well, the internet and its theories on this and fans are speculating that the authorities wanted to make sure Keefe would be willing to snitch on the real alleged mastermind, Sean Diddy Combs. So for the longest time, the prevailing theory was that Pac was eliminated because he and his crew beat up Southside Crip and Keefe D's nephew, Orlando Anderson, after that Mike Tyson fight in Vegas, and that all these other stories about Diddy and Biggie were just conspiracy theories. Many people believed that when Diddy said he was putting a $1 million bounty on Tupac, he was just trying to stir the pot. And then Keefe D later used this to implicate Diddy in Pac's case. Now, Orlando and Keefe both knew Diddy and Biggie and did security for them. And the reason Diddy would use Keefe D as security was because Diddy was allegedly convinced he was one of the few Compton shot callers that Suge would not F with. Now, the reason Tupac jumped Orlando is because Orlando reportedly stole a Death Row medallion from Trevon Lane, a Death Row affiliate and alleged gang member. And the reason he stole it was because Diddy apparently wanted a Death Row chain to taunt Suge with in his next music video. So Tupac's murder could have been just a random act of violence that went wrong. And yet, it's possible that this case is a lot less complicated than people are making it, because gang members take out others for a lot less. But there are still many fans who are convinced none of this was random, and they believe that when Diddy offered $1 million to Keefe to take out Suge and Pac, he wasn't joking around. Now, when Keefe D talked about all this in interviews, he always made it sound like Diddy was just spouting off, and that they didn't take it super seriously. But now that Keefe has been arrested and charged, people are speculating that the authorities may have finally discovered a paper trail connecting Diddy's $1 million offer to Tupac's case. Keefe also previously said he never received the $1 million because he never got to talk to Diddy after Pac's murder. So the whole story about Diddy putting a bounty on Pac's head was just a he said, she said with no actual proof. But see, there is apparently evidence that Diddy gave the money to an intermediary, Eric Von Zip, and Keefe said Von Zip used the bounty money to open a nightclub instead of passing it to the Southside Crips. Again, until now, all of this was just another story, and the police probably couldn't find any real proof that Diddy's offer of $1 million directly led to Tupac's death. But as I said, it's very interesting that they snatched Keefe now, and it really makes you wonder if they have something up their sleeve that could lead to Diddy's downfall. Also, have you noticed there have been some pretty weird vibes around Diddy for the past few months or so? I remember seeing a tweet about a month ago where this person said that something was going to come out soon about Diddy because Diddy was giving his former Bad Boy artists their publishing rights, and he reportedly made them all sign NDAs in exchange for their masters. Now, as for Diddy, he never actually addressed Keefe's allegations, and when he was asked about this on The Breakfast Club, he said he didn't even want to entertain the nonsense.
Now, it was this documentary that claimed, which we know wasn't true.
Yeah, check this out. We don't talk about things that are nonsense. We don't even entertain nonsense, my brother. So we're not even going to go there, with all due respect, but I appreciate you as a journalist asking. Thank you.
Because you listen, 7 years ago, I'd have been like, yo, did you hire somebody to kill Pac? But no, you do it like a journalist.
Yeah. No, I mean, we wouldn't even get into nonsense like that. You know what I'm saying? It's nonsense.
Which we never believed, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
But I don't know, y'all. Diddy didn't even let Charlemagne finish the question. He cut him off so quickly. And then the way he was rubbing his head nonstop. Anyways, guys, it's going to be really interesting to see what comes up in Keefe D's trial. And you already know I'll keep.
All right, guys. So I just wanted to share that real quick with you guys because I thought that was one of the most thorough put together pieces of information in regards to all of this. There's a lot of stuff that does definitely connect Puffy in regards to this matter. Okay. It's the fact that he knew both of these men. Okay. And that he also, that they both worked for as security for both Tupac and for Biggie. Okay. So if this guy is saying, and he has said for a long time, that that he was paid, okay, or that he was offered money, and that his crew was offered money to take out Tupac, okay, because of the fight. Like it wouldn't be out of the ordinary that all of these people would be in the same area around the same time because of the fight that was going on, the Mike Tyson fight. Okay, so because of that, of course, it would be, it'd be pretty plausible for them all to be in Vegas at the same time. Okay. So, but the fact that they got into this whole beef with this guy at the MGM, right? And then when they left the MGM, Keefe D was with his nephew and with the other two guys that were in the car. One of the guys' name is, I want to call him something D. I'll look up the name. But either way, as a matter of fact, let's get into that because they had some jury. They had like 300 pages, okay, that were released, okay, the grand jury transcripts. So let's just go ahead and get into what the witnesses said, okay, because there's witnesses that have come forward in the past couple days that have released all this stuff in regards to who they believe and who they said is most definitely the shooter, okay. And it wasn't Orlando Anderson, and it wasn't Keefe D either. Okay, but even though they were in the car. Now, this is what this person is saying. They're saying a witness told a Las Vegas grand jury who fired the shots that killed rap icon Tupac Shakur in the weeks before the panel voted to indict 60-year-old Dwayne Keefe D. Davis on a murder charge. Okay, now Las Vegas Metro Police arrested Davis near his Henderson home early Friday morning. And the grand jury, which met at least 5 times over the course of 3 months, voted Thursday to indict Davis on a charge of murder with a deadly weapon with a gang enhancement. Prosecutors announced the indictment on Friday. During the grand jury returning hearing, Chief Deputy District Attorney Mark DiMacomo said Davis' public statements implicated him, adding Davis allegedly ordered Tupac Shakur's death. About 300 pages of grand jury transcripts, including testimony from gang affiliates, friends of Shakur, and retired detectives. The shooting on September 7, 1996, at the intersection of Flamingo Road and Cobo Lane followed a fight earlier in the night. In the hours before the murder, Shakur's group reportedly attacked Orlando Anderson, a member of a rival gang, and Davis' nephew. The brawl at the MGM Grand involved members of the two rival gangs, which included security personnel from Shakur's recording company, documents said. The two groups were both in town for a Mike Tyson fight. Now, after the incident, Davis reportedly ordered a retaliatory hit on Shakur before a performance at Marion Suge Knight's now-closed Club 662. In court documents, witnesses said Davis, a longtime gang member, was a known drug trafficker. Witnesses said Shakur himself was not in a gang, but affiliated himself with members of the Mob Piru, which itself aligns with the Bloods. This is all alleged, okay? Now, Keefe is the one who's going to make all the arrangements and all the plans until the gun goes into somebody else's hand, a gang affiliate testified. Davis refers to himself as Keefe D in his book. He is sometimes also referred to as Keefe D or Keefe, K-E-F-Y, and prosecutors spelled his name K-E-F-F-E, though transcripts spell it differently. Davis was sitting in the front passenger seat of the car which pulled up side by side to Tupac's before the shooting at the intersection. Police and prosecutors said Knight, the then head of Death Row's Records, was driving a BMW sedan with Shakur in the passenger seat. Davis made several public statements about the night of the shooting, including in TV interviews and in a 2019 book entitled Compton Street Legend, Notorious Keefe D's street-level accounts of Tupac and Biggie's murders, death row origins, Suge Knight, Puffy Combs, and crooked cops, y'all. Okay? Anyway, Tupac made an erratic move and began to reach down, quote unquote, beneath his seat, Davis writes in the book. It was the first and only time in my life that I could relate to police command, keep your hands where I can see them, end quote. Instead, Pac pulled out a strap, and that's when the fireworks started. One of my guys from the back seat grabbed the Glock and started busting back. On Friday, Metro Police showed a diagram of the car Davis was in, showing Anderson and a third man, DeAndre Smith, that's who his name is, guys, DeAndre Smith sitting in the back seat. A Southside Crips gang affiliate testified it was Smith, not Anderson, who killed Shakur. Both Anderson and Smith are deceased. When Davis passed the firearm to Orlando, Orlando didn't have a clear shot. The gang affiliate told the grand jury. Big Dre is 6'6". At this time, he's 370, 400 pounds. He's big. And you're not going to be able to lean over a big guy like that and get, my time of knowing things doing, you're not going to reach over like that because shells would have been popping all in Big Dre's face and all kinds of stuff. He can't bend down or anything. He's too big. When asked if Smith was the shooter, the gang affiliate told the grand jury he did the shooting. Dwayne Davis was the shot caller for the group of individuals that committed this crime, and he orchestrated the plan that was carried out, Lieutenant Jason Johansson said on Friday. A member of Shakur's security team told the grand jury what he witnessed, saying he saw the car pull up to the one with Shakur in it and start firing. The car Tupac Shakur was riding in when he was shot and killed in September 96. And in the immediate moments after the shooting, Knight made a U-turn on Flamingo Road towards the Las Vegas Strip. He then drove southbound on Las Vegas Boulevard and then turned onto Harmon Avenue. Police stopped him just outside of the intersection, with some officers responding with 60 to 90 seconds, documents said. The members of the security team approached the car. Shakur was wounded in the passenger seat, and they said, "Get on the ground. They're going to shoot you," the witness told the grand jury. Shakur told him. He was not talking about Davis' group, but responding police officers who thought the shooter was among Shakur's entourage. There is no statute of limitations for when prosecutors can file murder charges in Nevada. The charge can apply to those who aid or abet in a murder, not just the person accused of pulling the trigger, prosecutors said. Davis was being held without bail and expected to appear in court today for his arraignment. So, turns out that we've got some old gang affiliates and people that were, I don't know if they were undercovers or what they were, but the bottom line is they were basically just talking and telling them what happened and how this had nothing to do with Orlando. Orlando might have been grabbed a gun or whatever, but he gave that to this other guy, the DeAndre Smith, and he is the one that let them shots off. And both of them are dead now, according to records, and they both have died, according to them, from gang violence. Orlando got killed maybe a couple years later. I didn't know about the other guy, but he died a couple years later as well. And Keefe D was the other guy, and the other guy that was the driver. He's dead too. Okay, so he's dead. The shooter is dead. Orlando's dead, and Keefe is alive because I guess he didn't give up Puffy back in the day. Okay, now the only connection that they really honestly have with Puffy, okay, is the Zoe guy. If it wasn't for Zoe, there would not be a connection with Puffy. Okay, and that was because there was a meeting that Keefe D had with the Zoe guy. Okay, but it was over the phone. and Puffy was over the phone, and they were asking like cryptic questions. You know what I mean? Like, was it y'all? Was it you? You know, and that kind of thing. And Keefe wasn't really given a full answer, and that's kind of how that went. And the guy was supposed to hand them this $1 million payment. Okay, he didn't. He ended up taking the money and opening up a club, and that's how that went. And so, the code of the streets, what's he gonna do? Call the police? You know what I mean? What's he gonna do, right? There really ain't much you can do about somebody taking your money. You know what I mean? Unless you bigger, badder, or better. Other than that, you're just, gonna be, you're just assed out pretty much. Okay. So that's kind of what happened in this situation. And I don't know if, and this could be another, theory. I don't know if Keefe D wanted some kind of compensation, and that's why he was willing to do this Netflix deal and this book deal and all this stuff over a murder that implicates him. I have no idea, but either way, all the money that he accumulated, he can't spend it now. Okay. If he accumulated much anyway, but either way, that is my thoughts on that. And that is what happened with that situation. That is the real deal of what's going on with Tupac. And as this story continues to develop, I will be bringing you guys more of this. I do plan on making this into a documentary on my other channel, but I wanted to at least go live and talk about this stuff with you guys, give you guys some of my theories and thoughts on this stuff, and what is really happening with all this. I think I went over everything that I wanted to say. Oh, yeah, the final thing I wanted to talk about was with Puffy, right? I get it. Like I said, I don't know if they can just indict Puffy on what they have, because what they have right now is just simply that, right? And the guy would have to be willing, like there would have to be a connection with this man and this story, right? Like they can't just take Keefe D's word for it. There has to be a witness to this conversation. If there's no other witnesses that's willing to come forward on that conversation between Zoe and Keefe D and Puffy, there's no connection there. Because Puffy has opened up and helped with many of business ventures. He has washed money, right, in multiple ways and through different things, okay? Not only with music, but with other things as well. However, it is important to keep in mind some of Puffy's behavior lately. And I was glad that that video brought that up, because I thought that was important to definitely talk about. When he gave up, when he had his artists signing those NDAs and saying that, in exchange you can have your masters, it made me think that he's going through a transition, right? Or he's about to experience some kind of transition. Usually it's like a spiritual transition, right? Or an epiphany or something like that. Or, a change of heart in ways, right? So, it's no doubt in anybody's mind at this point how powerful of a man Puffy is and how much he's been involved with in the industry, okay? We're not going to pretend that he has not had his hands very dirty in a lot of very questionable situations, okay? And, in questionable circumstances. It's always been a thing from Biggie's family to, even fans, that he had a heavy part in Biggie's death, okay? So it's not far-fetched to me at all that they are looking at Puffy over at least Biggie's death and now Tupac's death as well, okay? And that is because, in all honesty, the only one that's the player that's left in all of this, after all of the people, after all of the people on the chessboard, right? Down to the people that were in the video that were fighting with Orlando, down to the men that were in the car that committed the shooting, down to the record producers, the record labels, right? The only one standing is Puffy himself. He is the only one left. And over all these years, right? Over all of these years, he has been the only one to profit off of any of this. Like when it comes down to Biggie's death or Tupac's death, And when we talk about Tupac's death, let's think about this for just a second. And we're going to end the show on this note. If in the event he did pay the Zoe guy the $1 million, and he was supposed to drop that money to Keefe D, and he didn't, and instead he opened up a nightclub, you don't think Puffy was getting money off of that nightclub? That was his money that he invested into this, right? That's an easy way to wash some money, especially if he really don't got no respect for this guy for doing that, right? Who in the streets in that lifestyle would really respect a nigga like Keefe D, right? So that $1 million, that payment that he was supposed to receive, ended up going into a very profitable business for both of the men, for Zoe and for Puffy. And Puffy gets to move on and go on with his life. So in that sense, he made money off of Tupac as well. And then he got the other biggest player in the game off the board, which was Suge Knight. He's locked up. His whole, entire business and brand has been, completely, closed out, completely liquidated. It's gone. The only player left on the chessboard is Puffy. And sometimes it ain't always good to be the last man standing, In this particular case, I don't know if it's good for Puffy to be the last man standing, because now they got Keefe D. They know how much of a snitch he is. They know how willing he's willing to talk. He's 60 years old. He has nothing to lose now. They got him. He could have taken the charge and he could have taken the deal a long time ago and had full immunity if he had testified against people such as the likings of Puffy and others who are now dead. So they waited 27 years to let each one of them pick each other off one by one until they can get to the man, the last man standing. So now they're going to probably offer Keefe some lovely, lovely deal. Some wonderful, life-changing deal to help Keefe have a little bit of motivation this time, because there's a lot less players on the chessboard now. It's a lot less of these men who wouldn't take so kindly to him talking. Most of them are gone. That's the game that the police played. That's the game that they played. It's sad. It's fucked up, because justice should have been come for Tupac and for Biggie. It should have been here. But they played this game of chess so eloquently because of a guy like Keefe that's going to open his mouth and is going to talk. And when they offer him this life-changing deal, he's going to spill that tea worse than a woman in England, okay? Honey, he going to squeal so much. He going to start talking about all kinds of stuff that's going on, all kinds of stuff that's happening. But pay attention, people, to Puffy, to his artists, to his surroundings. Pay attention to other artists who have spoken about him, right? And where they are today and some of the things that they've experienced. Let's just go down that rabbit hole for just a second. Because there's a lot. There's a few of them. Cat Williams, Jamie Foxx, just to name a few. Multiple people have stories about Diddy and his alleged parties, his events. He's involved with some very powerful, powerful people. But at some point, all these men, especially the black men, right? All of them that decide they want to kiss the ring of the devil, they all get sacrificed at some point. Every single one of them. If you go down the list, you can just look. I ain't even got to name none. At some point, they get sacrificed. Pay attention. Because I think he knows. I think Diddy knows. Why else would he have them all sign NDAs in exchange for their masters? If you wanted to just be a wonderful, lovely person, you would just give them their masters. Why do they need to sign an NDA? Something to think about. Definitely something to think about. He didn't just suddenly find Jesus, and say, hey, let me just give y'all your masters. Mm-mm. He know what's coming down the road. He can feel it in the air, right? Shout out to Beanie Siegel. He can feel it in the air. He know it's coming. It's not what you do in life, it's how you do it, right? I know a lot of people, and I know people that are into different types of lifestyles, But again, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. Evil is never okay. Never. And that man right there, he's been involved in a lot of bullshit. A lot. And every dog has his day. Every dog has his day. And I think he has met his match. He has met his day. And I think he knows what he's facing. But rest easy to Tupac. And, may we just watch the wheels of justice come through over this situation. I don't know if they're just going to allow Keefe D to just be the fall guy, because Puffy's got a lot of money out here just running, And we'll see what happens, whether, his sponsors keep up with him or not, or if they decide to just expend him, as they do with most black men that decide to get in bed with him at some point. Maybe he's going to finally be, just expendable, and they're going to go ahead and just let him go. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see as time goes on what happens. But I have this very strong feeling that at some point, Puffy will be brought up on charges for the murders of both Tupac and Biggie. And if that happens, y'all heard it here. All right. Other people are talking about this too, so it ain't no exclusive or anything. But either way, guys, I appreciate all of y'all for coming and hanging out with me today. Make sure y'all hit the like button on the way out. You said, I thought that it was interesting that no one came and performed with him, celebrated Puffy at the VMAs. No one. You said there is so much still that we will never, ever know. Exactly. Never, never. He said, Puffy gave some masters back, but look at all the money he made that he hasn't seen to give back. Exactly. And there's just so many other things that he has used that money to create new business and other things with, that him giving their masters really isn't anything, but it's definitely raises an eyebrow, in light of all this, and in light of all this happening, especially when they went and raided the Henderson house in Nevada. When they went and raided that's when Puffy started, acting all Jesus-like and going to church and shit, So I don't know. But either way, guys, I appreciate all of y'all for being out here. Again, make sure y'all hit the like button on the way out. And guys, I will talk to y'all later. Thank y'all for hanging out with the pre today. And peace, guys. Thank y'all for watching.